Welcome to Paranormal or Reality. As it gets closer to Halloween, we will be posting more videos per week, stay tuned. But on today's video, we have a few ghost stories to explore. Now make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let's begin. So, this was around 2010. I was nearing my mid-20s. After my first failed attempt to move out of my parents' house, I returned home from the city to recoup from a failed attempt at being an adult. I was starting to hang out with the old crew from high school, my friend Jay, names changed for privacy, and my other friend Mark. Now Mark's parents were decently well off. They would leave on vacations for long periods of time, leaving Mark to watch over the house. The house had a history. It was a cute home built by his grandfather in the 40s, if I'm not mistaken. It was built into the side of a hill, so one side it looked like a one-story home. The other side revealed that it's a two-story, with a basement. The larger side of the house had a long wooden staircase leading to the kitchen that was the main door of the house. The front door on the short side always stayed locked, since no one came in that way. The house itself was fairly big. An open the kitchen flowed into the living room, and Mark's bedroom was attached in a hallway in the kitchen. There was an upstairs bedroom that his parents stayed in. The basement had no access from inside the house. Instead, it was accessed from outside. It had a big sliding wood door that opened up to a fairly spooky basement. It had a very old furnace in it that heated the home. It was huge and had many pipes spidering off it, almost like a tree with a bunch of branches. The layout of the home is important, so try to keep it in mind. Mark's grandpa built that home. He also died in the basement while he was working on one of his many projects. He passed many moons before Jay, and I started to come by to hang with his grandson. So, with all that being said, one night Mark, Jay, and I were coming home from the local bar. We had a ritual Thursday night to hit the bar for cheap dollar beer, then back to Mark's place where we would pick out a VHS from his parents' insane collection of VHS tapes and watch one. We would smoke a joint, hang out, and watch a movie. Honestly, it was always a lot of fun. One night we get back, it was late summer after midnight. I remember the movie we watched was some terrible movie called Terror Vision, super campy 80s stuff. We all smoked cigarettes at the time, so we paused the movie, moved out through the kitchen and down the steps outside so we can smoke. When we came back inside, all the drawers and cabinets in Mark's kitchen were all hanging open. When we walked in the living room, the door leading to outside was wide open. Mark couldn't explain it as he stated, "Nobody ever comes through that door, we always keep it locked." Maybe not a direct quote there, as it's been 14 years since this has passed, but you get the picture. We all armed ourselves with stuff we could find laying around. I think I had a cane or an umbrella. We didn't think it was a ghost by any means, maybe a friend messing with us or a burglar. We went through the whole house and found no one. We joked with Mark maybe it's a ghost. That's when he told us about Grandpa. From that moment we would joke around and said it was just Grandpa coming to visit. Nothing else happened that evening. We talked about it a few times, but nothing major. Then in the late September or maybe early October, Mark and I were hanging out. Jay was on his way over. We were going to our local drive-in movie theater to see whatever was playing that night. So it was golden hour, the sun was starting to fade, but not before pouring gold all across the land. Mark and I were inside watching the Simpsons DVDs he owned and playing Jenga of all things. That's when we heard a familiar noise. We heard someone coming up the big wooden steps from outside. We got up to greet Jay in the kitchen getting our cigarettes ready. When we got there, nothing. Jay's truck wasn't out there, just our cars. And nobody was at the door or on the steps. We decided, okay, that's pretty weird much with a glance to one another. We went back into the living room to continue watching The Simpsons as we sat down. We heard the steps again, this time heading back down. Thinking about it still gives me the chills. Mark and I looked at each other this time. He said, "Let's get out of here." I said, "Yup." We got up and left from the front door because we didn't want to even entertain the thought of leaving through the kitchen. Nothing like that ever happened again. Now I'm not a super believer in anything. Most things can be explained with some rational thought. We've been through them all before. This is the one thing in my life that I can say doesn't make much logical sense. Maybe it just was Grandpa coming to visit. I was about 8 or 9 years old. My sister wanted to stay the night at my grandma's house. I agreed, but I was scared to sleep in her living room for some reason. It gave me weird vibes as a kid, so I said I wouldn't go if I had to sleep on the couch. My sister reassured me that she would convince Granny to let me sleep with them, so I was relieved. And we went. My sister and I sat on the couch watching TV and eating popcorn. It got dark and fell asleep on the couch together. I didn't mind since I was with my sister, so I felt safe. A little while later, I woke up and my sister was gone. It was pitch black, and I couldn't see anything. I was about to get up when I saw this light coming from down the hall. I sat down again and thought it was my grandma just coming from her room with a flashlight or something. There was this mirror pointed toward the hall, so I looked in it, and there was this girl with long blonde hair with an old-time wedding dress. She looked about my age, and I felt this sadness in my chest. She walked from down the hall all the way into my grandma's kitchen until her dress disappeared through the garage door. She walked right past me. She never turned her head my way. I just remember wanting to follow her because of the sadness I couldn't bring myself to. When the dress disappeared, I ran into my grandma's room and went to sleep in her bed, honestly. I didn't know what I saw. I just thought I was crazy. It seemed like she wanted me to follow her. I just didn't. A few years later, my brother said he saw a girl in our grandma's kitchen going into the garage. Putting two and two together now is making me wonder if she wanted us to find something that's inside that garage. I just want to know if I should help or not. It's been years. My grandma still lives in the same house. She's never told me about a ghost, and I don't think she knows of it, but I do remember my grandma telling us not to be in there alone. And she keeps a lock on the door as well. I've tried searching around on the internet, but nothing really showed up. Home built in 1940. Her back bedroom had an odd vibe, especially in and around the closet. I was visiting with my 2 children, son aged 8 and daughter aged 3. We had had a long day at the beach having a blast. While getting the kids bathed and ready for bed, my son kept picking at his sister. Being that I was tired and kind of aggravated, I tucked him and my daughter into bed a bit earlier than usual. My son kept coming out of the bedroom to tell me things. They were silly things like needing water or his sister was bothering him. You know, kid stuff. Anyway, I tucked him in one last time and was standing in the kitchen doorway talking with my grandma while she made a pot of coffee for us. The kids' bedroom was to my left, down a very short hallway. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone standing in the hall. Thinking it was my son again, I turned to tell him to get back in bed, but I stopped short. Leaning against the hallway wall was a teenage boy with his arms folded in front of his chest. He had on a short-sleeved striped shirt and brown corduroy pants. He was also wearing suede desert boots, like the kind from the 1970s. He had short, dark brown curly hair. Both my children were blondes. He was grinning at me, as if he found the situation amusing. He was completely solid, not ghost-like at all. With my mouth open, amazed at what I was looking at, I turned my head to tell my grandmother what I was seeing, but when I looked back towards the hallway, he was gone. The family had always felt there was something in the house. Now I saw who or what it was. The problem with knowing it was a kid freaked me out, though, because supposedly demons sometimes show themselves as children. Whatever stayed in the back bedroom near the closet always felt evil and frightening. I never saw anything again, though, but my family witnessed dozens of paranormal things in that house. My mother lived there after my grandmother passed away. Many times, my mom saw a shadow person peeking at her from around the doorframe in the hallway, standing exactly where I saw the boy apparition. She even saw her not-alive mother in that same doorway. Her mom was standing with her hands on her hips and asked my mom if she was going to stay in bed all day. My 5-year-old niece went to stay overnight with my mom, her grandma, but asked to go home because the thing in the closet was scaring her. She never went back to stay at Grandma's house, even when her cousins were there. That house burnt to the ground a few years ago, so none of us have to see, hear, or feel anything there again. In the 60s and 70s, my mother loved to go ghost hunting. She and her friends would go anywhere someone said was haunted. One night, when she and her friends got back, I noticed they all looked scared, and they told me they brought something back. 2 weeks passed and nothing happened. Then one night I heard my mother scream. I ran downstairs to see what happened. She told me she was sleeping on the couch and heard a woman crying in the basement. She went into the basement to investigate, and the woman started screaming. She couldn't tell where the screaming was coming from. And when she looked out the basement window, she could see her reflection and realized she was the woman screaming. She told me when she started running back up the basement steps, she could hear the woman laughing. After that happened, my mother swore she was possessed by demons. The next day, she took me to an old Baptist cult-like church in the hills where they handle serpents, speak in tongues, heal people, and exorcise demons. As soon as we walked into the church, the pastor came over and placed his hand on my mother's forehead. She fell to the ground screaming. Then she started rolling around, growling, spitting, and trying to scratch everyone. All the people gathered around, held her down, and started praying and chanting something. I was only 7 years old at the time, and this scared the hell out of me, so I ran outside and waited until they were finished. When she came out, we went back home, but it didn't seem to work because things kept happening. She had seances trying to speak to the evil spirits that were in the house and the ones that possessed her. We had the house blessed every few months, but nothing seemed to work. This nightmare continued until I was in my teens, and we moved out of Pennsylvania to Ohio. I'm in my 50s now, and I remember some things from back then. I remember people standing outside my window, even though my bedroom was on the 3rd floor. I remember my bed shaking violently and lifting off the ground. I heard whispers all the time when there was no one home, and saw glimpses of faces in the mirror when I walked past. I had night terrors every night, so I don't know if these things really happened, or if I was just a terrified child with a wild imagination and a mentally ill mother. I hear about people going ghost hunting all the time, and I don't know why anyone would want to take the chance of experiencing anything like this if it's real. Thanks for tuning in. Watch another video if you dare.